Wouldn't it be nice to have several thought leaders in your industry know and love your brand? Start a podcast. Invite your industry's thought leaders to be guests on your show and start reaping the benefits of having a network full of industry influencers. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. Guys, I've got with me today James Kessinger, who is Chief Marketing Officer at Hushly. James, how you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Good. Glad to hear it. So we're going to be talking about 4 essential habits to online content development, which I cannot wait to get into with you. But before we do, I'd like if you would just give us a little bit of a background on yourself and what you and the folks at Hushly have been up to these days.
Yeah, you bet. So I've been in the business for about 20 some odd years. And on the marketing side, I also did I guess about 3 years or so in sales. So I have carried the bag. And I think, looking out at my past experience, I think it's kind of helped shape me being able to be sort of cross-functional. I've been in product marketing, services marketing, channels, and et cetera, right? So I think it's given me a broader perspective. So when you kind of go in to take over sort of a CMO role, you're going to be getting everything, right? So it's, that cross-functional experience really helps you out. And it's given me a good foundation to sort of, kind of rest myself on, but also continue to grow from. So, and then I think, if I look at Hushly today, it's interesting because, I was a startup, first of all, and I've been at mainly big enterprise companies. So it's in technology, for that matter. So we're basically just a very small startup. And, we have a marketing platform essentially that integrates into any web or landing page with no program required, right? And it essentially, it just creates opportunities for your business by turning abandoners into hand raisers sort of before they leave your site. Essentially, that's kind of the easy way to put it, right?
Right.
But, in layman's terms, I guess, right, B2B marketers essentially use us to increase their lead conversions on their landing pages, and we say by 51%. We sort of guarantee that because we actually have the analytics around it to show that we can go do that. So we put that guarantee out there, and it's been great. And I think I always look at it when I talk to marketers, because I do a fair bit of selling as well, and I'm on the phone with a lot of these folks, and I always look at it as it's a way of amplifying your existing investments. Especially for folks. People that do SEO always say, look, I'm doing SEO, so I'm not really paying for traffic. And I'm like, well, you are. They're paying for you to do that, right? And you're still building content. Someone's paying for that content. So, so those arguments aside, right, I think it's really the paid marketers who actually show an ROI on what they're doing, right? So having a content strategy is one thing. Being able to drive traffic and the right traffic to consume that content is another whole story. And then essentially we help you deliver on that promise of sort of getting the right content in the right hands at the right time, be that through personalization or however you want to do it, right? And we increase those conversions. And obviously, at the same time, since we're a performance-based price, we do that at a performance model. So, and it's about a third of what you'd be paying. So that's that. In short, that's sort of a little bit about us, and I think, but a little bit about kind of where we are and sort of how we focus on the market too.
I love it. I love it so much. Like, who says no to that? Who says no to 50% more higher conversion rate?
I was a customer. I was a customer before I came on as a CMO, so I didn't say no. So that's my biggest problem. I'm solving abandonment. Sure.
There's that. Plus, I gotta tell you, you're a marketer, you're a CMO, and you said you do a fair bit of selling. A marketer who sells, oh my word! It's a man after my own heart.
Everybody in marketing is selling, whether you like it or not. You're maybe not getting commission, right? But especially in a startup, I think you're always taking on the role of being the evangelist. In this case, I'm selling a marketing technology to marketers. So for me, I'm always like, hey, look, I might as well show you what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, if I'm not using it, then there's a problem for sure. So, right?
For sure. And now you're going to tell us your ways. So you're going to tell us the 4 best habits to form for online content. We love superlatives around here. The 4 best habits to form for online content development. And we talked about this offline, you and I, and I've done a good bit of research on this, and you wrote an amazing blog about this. And the first thing that you talked about is why it's important to check your analytics each morning. Dig into that for us.
Yeah, I think one of the things you've got to do is you always have to be understanding of what's going on with your content, right? Whether that's your old content or the stuff you've just put out there, because you've got to make sure you understand how it's trending, what's happening, who's looking at it, and more importantly, looking at how it's converting on the back end, not just what's going on with sort of the SERP analytics and everything that if it's ranking, that kind of stuff, right? I think you've got to take a broader, sort of look at that. And it's an easy habit, right? At the end of the day, it's something you get up and, again, you don't have to get up in the morning and go do it. But I mean, that's my way of content marketing, right? So I look at it, when I get up, I mean, those are the things that I'm sort of looking at. I'm looking at how's my content trending? What's going on out there? What's new going on, right? I think, one of the things, and I sort of just added this one in, I guess, is a 5th one, if you want to call it that, but really is also, I know it's kind of fun because, so one of the things I think is important is content audits. I mean, I think you've regularly got to do content audits on top of that. And I found that if you constantly need to be looking at your content, right, to ensure that your content needs, as things change, right, whether your content needs do or your business needs, you've got the strategy geared towards ensuring it's working for you, not against you, right? I mean, I think, content audits give you an idea for identifying potential topics where you can expand, right, and making sure you're making adjustments to your content strategy. Kind of what's there, right? So you're not you can see what's trending over time. You can see the conversations. You can see what's converting, how converted. Maybe I should be going deeper to that topic because that one's working for us. And it also uncovers sort of how well your content's ranking, right? Whether or not it's driving the right traffic. I mean, not all traffic's great, right? So is it driving the right traffic? And more importantly, is it driving the conversions of those traffic? I think those are big things to look at. It's like, hey, it's ranking well. The traffic coming to your site never converts. Well, okay, maybe it's time to, it's ranking well is one thing, right? So I think it's just a matter of now, does that work for you, right? I mean, I use content audits myself, right, to help me identify topics that I should also revisit. For that matter, blogs, right, is a great way, but is one you need to revisit and sort of go deeper on than maybe I previously had, because it's something that's just trending well, or just happens to be, we've shifted strategy, so now it's time to go a little deeper into that. So so I mean, that's sort of, if I call that number 5, I'll call it number 5.
It's a way of holding yourself accountable. I mean, you and I talked about this offline, which is the fact that what we're talking about here in terms of creating content, it's important of course, for marketers, but for salespeople who are individual contributors on up to sales leaders and CEOs and whomever else who are pursuing these thought leadership efforts, right? We have our own little version of content creation and analytics. So if I wake up in the morning and I have a sense of like, do I really want to see how my last LinkedIn post is performing? Then, that tells me a couple of things about myself, right? Like if I'm not even excited about it, then, I can't really expect other folks to be excited about it. And if I'm afraid to look at that and then think about how to correct course, then I'm not really holding myself accountable. So to your point, you said, I don't know if you should do it in the morning. I think you should. I think you should challenge yourself. Wake up this morning and see, what it's talking about, as they say.
Yeah, no, well, that's back to number 2, right? I think sort of looking at is sort of checking. So it's not just looking at sort of what's going on, right, in terms of the analytics each morning. I mean, that's obviously you should be doing that anyway. That's just natural pruning you need to be doing, but also looking at in terms of what's trending in the industry, right? God knows there's trends out there, right? Especially, maybe not as many on the B2C side. There's a ton of stuff that goes on the B2C, but B2B, I mean, I think we need to do a better job, right, at understanding what's working, what's not working, and understanding what are some of the trends, because there's a lot of big trends that are happening, be that consolidations in the industry, be that new technology coming out, or old technology that people are refreshing to make it new technology. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, right? But what that does is it helps you kind of stay so that you can start to develop topics, right, and stay relevant, stay ahead, and make sure you're understanding, look, as you start to see trends happening, because maybe you see something coming in, but it's like a weekly, like, gosh, I always see this sort of same topic. Is this something that I need to be deeper on because A, I'm not covering it, B, it's probably something that's worth and relevant out there. And I have an opinion on it. I mean, more importantly, I think you should have an opinion, right? So,
right.
And I think those are also good things, right? And I think there's the lowest hanging fruit, which is if you really want to talk about, because people say, well, great, where do I go find this trending stuff, right? And I think the lowest hanging fruit, obviously, people don't know, which is probably a shame. It would be sort of like Google Alerts, right? I mean, that's
Right.
literally is sort of like the free man's anything, right?
What?
So
No.
yeah, I mean, right. So I mean,
Wait,
but
what?
if you want to get advanced, and I mean, a lot of marketers do. I think there's where you get into like I talk about the blog, right? Like BuzzSumo, and I think you get into very advanced platforms that actually start looking at trending data and understanding. Hey, here's a surging, not just what's going on, but like what's going on a Tuesday. You know what I mean? And what platforms work really great? Is it like Tuesday at 5:00? This is like this topic does great or something. So I think there is that relevance, which is what's your audience doing out there? Are you releasing things at the right times? I mean, you can get into ad nauseum stuff. But I think it's important. And I think that those are the things that are important, and not just understanding what's going on in your industry, but also how do you want to communicate back out to your industry for that matter.
Right. Because that's otherwise it doesn't it doesn't count if it doesn't land, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Number 3, I have to admit, is one that my 10th grade self would have rolled her sassy little eyes at, because number 3 says you got to read. So you have to read about online marketing. I on this show, I say famously, on this show, I notoriously talk about how I'm not really a pages between the fingers kind of girl. If I can't find it on Audible late, and it's not written by Jane Austen, and it's not The Great Gatsby, then I probably haven't actually read it. I probably listened to it. But number 3 is read about online marketing at least once a week. Tell us why.
And it's funny. I say online because it's you kind of make it a little opaque, right? But it's really and I say it to be broad because it's you need to stay up to date as much as you can, and whether that is really if you're driving into specific areas, you're going like I want to read about SEO or SEM or what. I think you need to be taking a broader approach, especially as an executive or as a CMO, right? I mean, you need to understand broadly kind of what's going on, and that includes looking at what your competition is. I mean, you see in jazz, right? You need to be looking at what your competition is saying out there. And I'm sure they've got releases and stuff that's always changing. So I'm always trying to stay up to date. And I always try to, I say once a week just because I'm probably terrible because I'm usually like, once a day at least doing this, right? If not more.
Well, because once a week, remember, we're talking about the best habits.
The best,
so
right?
Once a week is the best.
I mean, I'm and again, and I consume a lot of content. So I put a lot of content out there because I enjoy it. So I think for me, and I love marketing. So I love being able to do this. But I think, the best, right, is sort of, at least once a week. God knows. I mean, you should be doing at least once a week and just trying to, if nothing, stay rest. And I realize, and coming from a big industry and, big enterprise backgrounds, your calendars get full, things happen. So that's kind of why I looked at the week other, because I was really thinking about my old self where, there's just meetings that are meetings, right? And it's like, look, you need to stay ahead of what's going on. You need to be aware, take the time to step back, and I look at all kinds of stuff. I mean, whether that's Forbes or Marketing Land, Search Engine Journal, there's all kinds of stuff you can go look at least from a marketing perspective. But, once you understand that, I think you really need to go do that and familiarize, just get familiarized with what's going on with your industry and or the industries you're serving. Because again, there's probably changes happening in certain industries that may be relevant for what you're trying to go market into. Again, it's, it's just
and
relevant,
you'd
right?
be surprised. I know that I was once I started opening books. You'd be surprised what it is. Just our little girls growing up. But you would be surprised what an edge actually reading will give you over the competition. Because here's the thing, right? Like you just heard me say, it's not just that people are busy. Yeah. It's that we're so conditioned, we're so used to information being sort of diced up and handed to us on a silver platter, right? So if I could choose between reading about what's happening in marketing or, watching a thought leader's video on LinkedIn, I might just say, oh, this is quicker, this is easier. And that's good too. But if most folks are doing that, and then you're taking the time to form to have your best habits and actually read, that's what's going to actually give you the edge. So I like number 3 now that I'm not my 10th grade self, I'm into it. Number 4, there was something I'm going to have to say that comes naturally to me. Number 4 is make networking a priority. And I don't know that this is something that most folks would have front of mind when they're thinking about their online content development strategy. But tell us why you think it's important.
Yeah, so and it's both, and again, you can look at networking in 2 ways. And again, there's the traditional way, which is sort of like you're doing things with people, right? And I think that's and that's live, right? And I never shy away from doing dinners or gatherings, or I do these these meetings and these dinner series and that kind of stuff, round tables where I can, because I think those are important. And
for sure,
A, you get to meet your peers, and B, you kind of, even if it's not your peers, you get to discuss kind of what's going on And I typically obviously like to hear about marketing stuff. So I like to understand what's going on and hear things. And
right. Because my husband and kids do not want to hear me talk about sales
right. So,
anymore. Like they've made this clear.
Yeah, and I think it gives you different perspective. That also tells you, you're not having the, it's not just your problem that's out there, right? There's other people that have the same problems,
Sure.
but also some people are solving it differently, and they're solving. You thought you solved the problem, you're doing really well, but maybe somebody solved it and they're doing better. It's like, oh gosh, maybe I should be looking at that. I mean, so there's that piece, and there's the online ones, which is following people, and I try to do this right, which is recommend, and when I'm putting out my LinkedIn posts and stuff, I put and I tag people where I can, right? Because look, at the end of the day, is they've got good content. I might as well let them know I thought it was really good. And if you can network with them, even better, right? Be that on LinkedIn or however, if you happen to see them in person, that's great. And eventually over time, you're able to kind of tag those things, and maybe they start tagging you. Maybe they start giving you those backlinks that are obviously very valuable, right? That kind of stuff. And I think there's the ability for you once the networking itself is also one of those things I think just keeps you from being in a silo, right? Because the minute you sort of start to kind of silo yourself, I think you're like, hey, I'm just reading this stuff, and here's, because you're one perspective. You read that, and you got one perspective. Hey, I read this article. What did you guys think? And you sort of just throw things out to an audience or a group of people. I think you get different perspectives, which helps you in your ability to write content. Sometimes you're like, well, geez, I actually was reading it completely this way. So you have to always take other people's thoughts in it, at least in kind of what you're writing out there.
I love it. So to recap, for those of you who are following along and writing this down in your little day-to-day journals, the 4 best habits to form for online content development are: check your analytics each morning. See what's trending in your industry every day. Read about online marketing at least once a week, and make networking a priority. I couldn't agree with you more. These are things, like I said, that I am working to apply to my own sort of version of content marketing that I'm doing with my LinkedIn and with my personal branding. And I'm so glad that you came and laid this out for our listeners today.
Of course. And the 5th, by the way. And
the fifth. I'm sorry.
Regularly do content audits, right? That's the new and improved. So maybe I have to update my blog now.
Now you have to.
From May, by the way. so I've already refreshed it. Think of this. It's like a content refresh.
It's okay. It's good. If you are learning and making adjustments in real time, that's how you grow.
Yeah.
So now that I, James, have successfully picked your brain and seen what I could get out of it, it is time for you to tell us about what you are putting in it. Tell us about a learning resource that you engage with that is either informing your approach that's just got you excited these days.
Yeah, there's 2, really. And I think the first one is a book called Mindset, right? The New Psychology of Success. It's by Carol Dweck, and it's great. And honestly, and I have kids, so it actually applies to me a lot of times as well. So it's about a growth mindset, and sort of going through that piece. And if you haven't read the book, it's actually it's a terrific book. And again, maybe you don't need to read it. You just take I think there's a podcast on the whole thing now too. So that's the first one. The second one is an interesting one, and I wasn't sure I was going to like it, honestly, but someone had recommended it. I was like, I'll check it out. But I did, and I just read it, and it's called Quiet. And if you haven't checked it out, it's interesting. So it's called The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. Well, see, people. So and it's interesting if you read the book, because it gives you thoughts around when you're in meetings and there's the people that just don't talk, right? And you're like, well, they definitely have things to say. They probably just don't want to speak with a crowd. So anyway, you know what an introvert is, I think, but they've got great ideas. There's a lot of introverts out there, and by the way, who are in very C-level positions, and senior executives and CEOs. And they're just terrified, right? When they're actually on stage or they're doing something, because it just terrifies them. And they've, kind of overcome some of this. But anyway, so check out the book. It's actually a pretty cool one too. So it's called Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain.
A book about a world that can't stop talking for the
between you and I, when I talk.
Right. Well, no, look, that one, I'm glad you said I think I do want to read that one or listen to it. Let's be real. Because here at Sweetfish Media, I don't know if a lot of you guys listening know this, but I'm kind of outnumbered. Most of the folks here in leadership positions who founded, and shout out to James Carberry, who founded and run this company, are introverts. And a lot of my best friends who are introverts are the ones who end up knowing me better than the other friends because they're the ones who are quietly observing, which is scary.
Which is very scary, by the way.
Because there's a lot going on here.
See, you can now gift this book to them, to your founders at Christmas. Be like, hey, I got a book for you.
Yes, and then apologize for talking all the time. But so I know that James, just like me, everybody out there that's listening has quickly become a fan of yours. They're going to want to reach out to you. Tell us, how can folks connect with you?
The two easiest ways: LinkedIn, and I'm just James Kessinger, and I'll probably pop up, and then James B. Kessinger on Twitter. That's it. I'm not on Facebook.
So you can find him on the internet. We'll have to have you on again to, I don't know, see what else is up with Hushly.
Absolutely.
Talk about another blog that you wrote or another book that you read or listened to. Whatever. This was fun. We don't even need a good reason. This was great. Thank you so much, James.
You bet. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.